My name is Betty Durr, and I'm an artist at the Screw Factory. How I became an artist. I think that from the time I was very little, I've always loved art and acting and just creative things. And so I always knew that I wanted to do something, and I was always the kid that had to put on the funny hat and do something. So I didn't know what I was going to do, but I loved art. I loved painting. When I was young, my mother remarried and my stepfather's Danish. And so I was really fortunate to be able to go with them a number of times to Europe to visit family and travel around, and saw so much that impacted me: art and music and dancing. Just, it opened up a whole nother world. And so whenever I graduated from high school, I ended up going to the Ringling School of Art down in Florida in Sarasota, and that's where I met Rob. And it was just kind of a journey to come to what we're doing now. It's taken a number of years. I mean, we met how long ago?
Too long.
I think, what, 50?
55 this year.
55, 56? Well, but we
coming?
We met 56 years ago. We've been married 55.
Yeah, but we were married.
So yes, so that's kind of like part of what the journey was. Your turn.
Hi, my name's Rob, her husband. I think I shall be, so by the end of this thing. My family grew up loving art. My mom was very creative, and she loved to draw. That's where I got drawing from her. And my brothers were all artists. But as far as becoming an artist as an occupation, it was something that was like going to Mars. You just didn't do that. We were kind of raised on a farm in upstate New York, so it was a farm kid. You're not an artist, but we all enjoyed art. And when I was in the Army, I was always drawing and sketching and drawing the guys. And they said, you should go to art school. And I thought, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. I never would have done it if nobody had told me. I probably would have been a truck driver or something. But so I found an art school that was nearby in Sarasota, Florida, the Ringling School of Art. Started going there. And I thought I was going to be an illustrator. Like, I love children's books and good illustration there, so I was going to do something with pen and ink was my favorite. But we had a project one time that we could use any medium you wanted to use. I thought, well, I had an idea of doing something, and I thought, what if I took this into a dimension instead of just a two-dimensional, three-dimensional piece? And I loved it. I fell in love with doing three-dimensional. So I started looking more into that and started getting some tools together so I could carve into wood and work with clay and all that kind of thing. And found that I really had an aptitude for it. I love doing it. And I've been doing it to this day for the last 50 years. So
My work is a little bit more ambiguous because I kind of went in and out of doing different jobs, of being a mom, stay-at-home mom for a number of years, homeschooled for part of that time. So there was a lot of gap time between some of the things that I was doing. I think when we got out of school, we kind of drifted around a little bit, didn't really do too much. And then we had lived upstate in New York and in Massachusetts. And then we moved back down to Florida. And then what happened was we started doing craft shows. This was in the 70s, early to mid 70s. We started doing wooden toys. Our company name was The Wooden Horse. We did rocking horses. We did all kinds of kids' toys. We did a little toy that's called a Dancing Dan. And it's like you have a big paddle and you have a little puppet on a stick, and you hit the paddle and his arms and legs go up and down and he dances. So we did all that kind of stuff for quite a few years and traveled around, and that's what we did. And then the next section of what we were doing was we moved back up here. I was actually born in Cleveland, and we moved up here. Rob got a job with American Greetings. At that point, I was a mom, a fairly new mom, so I was raising my son. And then we got involved with a group. We actually started a puppet troupe. We had a troupe of about 8 adults that were all puppeteers. We made all of our own puppets. And again, we kind of traveled around and did stuff in libraries and churches and schools. And so I guess part of the creativity then was making the puppets. I was writing the scripts, and I was the director. And then after that, I got involved in theater. And so I was acting a number of years in a lot of the theaters in this area. Then what did we do? And then at that point, after my son had graduated and moved on to college, I was working for an international adoption company, but agency. And after I stopped doing that, he had been working at a company, and we both lost our jobs at the same time. But we had this studio, and they had just started doing open studio shows for the artists. And then we said, well, maybe we should do something, but maybe we need something that's more of like a bread and butter item. And at that point, I had just started to make a fairy garden in one of my flower beds. And I took some pictures, and somebody saw it, and they said, oh, you should make doors. And so we thought, oh, okay. So I said to Rob, well, I would like a fairy garden door. Maybe we could make some of this small stuff and see if anybody buys it at this open studio show. So we did, and they did buy it. And so that kind of like took us, or me, into this next section of my life as far as being creative and doing the hidden world stuff. I mean, I guess we've had impact because we've done things in the botanical gardens and the Cleveland Holden Arboretum, and things like that. So as far as impacting the community, I think that it's like whenever people see stuff and they're maybe inspired to make something of their own.
Well, we moved back down to Florida because my brother was starting a sign shop, and he had starting his own work, and I said, would you like to come down and we can be partners in this? So we ended up back in Florida, where I vowed I would never return, but I thought it was a good chance of us making a lot of money at the time, but that never happened. But that's okay, because he gave us a lot of direction. So we ended up moving up here after that stint of about 10 years down there.
Yeah, 10
but
years.
Your father had given us the house that we lived in.
Right, we inherited the house.
Amy, you're going to wind up in American Greetings. And I said, no, I don't do card art. I'm a sculptor. So he said, you're going to do it. You're going to get a job. So I went around to a couple of different places and figured out where I could get a job in American Greetings. And I went to this one place, there's one open, and they said, we've got an opening for someone who can do molds and castings. And I had done a little bit of mold and casting, and I said, well, I can do that. So they actually hired me to see how it would work out. If it worked out well, then I would stay on. If it didn't work out well, then they would let me go. And so I was making prototypes of Christmas ornaments, and I was sculpting them, started getting more and more involved. And they kept me on. I was there for 12 years. So they finally let me go, and I wandered around a bit. I got a commission doing a life-size female sculpture. Some friends of ours that commissioned me to do that. I needed a place to make it because it was life-size, large amount of clay and everything. So I called up a guy that I knew from American Greetings. He said, oh, this guy just moved out of this place in the screw factory. Might be able to find a place there to work. So I came in. There was about 3 other people in the whole building. All there was just 3 people here, another person over here, Christina, and that. So I brought in my clay, did the sculpture, and that was in 2001.
2000.
So
yeah,
that was a long time ago. But anyway, it worked out great because losing my job at the toy company forced me into coming here and having to work on my own stuff. So I had all this pent-up creativity in me to make my own things. And so working on the doors and the hidden worlds and all that with Betty, and that's why we ended up doing the fairy garden stuff.
We had both lost our jobs, and we were just kind of like, oh, what are we going to do? Because it happened at the same time. It was really a pretty traumatizing
Yeah,
thing. But we said, well, we just need to get away. Let's drive down to Amish country, look around, spend the day, and just chill out. So we had a great time. We really had a great time. And we ended up going to this little garden center.
Right.
And looking around, and they had miniature plants, which I'd never really seen those very much. And I was like, oh, these are just so adorable. And they were like, they had a little container garden, and with all these miniature plants and little statues of fairies and things like that. And I was just like, I was in love. It's like, oh, this is so cool. Because my whole life I've always loved little miniature things. My favorite thing whenever I was a little girl was an old tin dollhouse. And so here was this little miniature garden, and Rob said, well, let's buy some of the plants, and you can do whatever you want with them. We could do, you could do something out front, because I've got a little flower garden out there. So even though we didn't have any money coming in, we bought a bunch of plants, and I bought a little fairy, and I started a little fairy garden. And I took some pictures, I put it on Facebook, and a friend of mine said, oh my gosh, you've got to get a door for your fairy garden. And she sent me a link, because Ann Arbor in Michigan, there is an artist there that does fairy doors. They're very, very realistic looking. And they're all throughout Ann Arbor, and they do scavenger hunts to find them. So I went online, I looked at it, and I thought, oh, this is really cute. So at that time where they were having the open studio show, and Rob was going to have some of his sculptures, and I said, well, let's get something that's a little bit lower price point, so that someone can't buy a sculpture, they could buy this if they like it. And I really need a fairy door, so let's make that. And so we did. We designed these things together, and we designed about 6 pieces
At the most.
At the most, yeah, 6 pieces, and Rob did the molds and did casting. So we had a little table full of stuff, and everything sold. So it was like, oh, well, that's pretty awesome. Now what do we do with it? And one of my nieces saw what we were doing, and she's like, oh, Aunt Betty, you have got to put this on Etsy. And I said, yeah. What's Etsy? So she told me what it was, and we looked at it, and we started on Etsy, and that's so.
This was more than 20 years ago.
Yeah, this was that was 2009. 2009, we started on Etsy, and so gradually, we got a client base, and we did more open studio shows, and it really built up to where it was a viable second business. Being artists has, I think, helped, and I don't think we ever compete with each other. And I believe that we've learned, when you're younger, yeah, you're going to compete. It's like, because you're fighting for your idea. Well, I think that we should make this. And sometimes it got a little fraught. But when you've been together enough, you kind of know that, some things you can let go of, and some things you can fight for, or at least, there's always a way to compromise and make it together, so that you're both pretty much happy with, what you're making, if you're making things together. And I think life is the same way, because you're building a life together. If you want to stay together and want to stay in love, or at least sometimes, then you have to work at it, and you have to be able to compromise sometimes. And you have to just lay down sometimes some of the ego, and you both learn to do that. And I think that that's one thing, because there are some days whenever I'm like going, oh my God, that looks like crap, Rob, you need to do it over again. And then I have to go, okay, I'm sorry, I should not have said it like that.
Hi, Rob back again. These are my personal pieces that I work on, and whenever I need to use my creativity and using wood and all kinds of different medium. But the story goes back to this guy here. It's a red-tailed hawk, and it was a commission piece that I got to do the full body red-tailed hawk. So I did the commission, made a mold of it, The rest of the clay that was the rest of the body disintegrated and fell all apart. So all I was left with was the head of the hawk. I'm going, what can I do with the head of a hawk? So I'm looking around and I glance over my pile of wood that I have there that I scavenge up, and I saw this log of cherry wood that a friend of mine had given me from American Greetings. So I said, cherry wood is red. This is a red-tailed hawk. And my mind was working as far as a lot of people don't like or care for pieces of that aren't realistic. So I had the realistic head, the red-tailed hawk, and the body with this cherry wood, and I thought I'm going to make it more abstract so the pieces work together and creating a new piece from the two. So that's what I did, mounted it on a piece of granite, and I've got so much feedback from it as far as something very unique. I've never seen anything like it. So having more wood, more roots that I dug up from down the road in my yard, and this guy here came out of that with the bronze wings and the bronze head. So most of these are pieces that I dug up from down the street.
As far as the future, I guess what I'd like to do is just do what we're doing, find ways to make it better and maybe get it out to the public even more. I love doing things like we did the thing at the Cleveland Botanical Gardens, and we went into the children's garden and did like 11 installations of our pieces, because everything can go outside. We make it so it's very, very weather resistant. That was like a really great thing, and to like kind of be like a little fly on the wall and see as the kids came in and saw things and how much they loved it and maybe inspired them to make something themselves. The same as these things. I think when we make these and I sell like on Etsy or here, we have a lot of customers that are repeat customers, and they'll send pictures of what they've done. So I think that it's a good feeling to know that you're putting something into people's hands, that they can be creative with what you've created. They can make something that's their very own. And I think that that's an exciting thing. And, you know, I'd like to just keep on doing that. There's always new things to make and to do and to like work into your life and how you can use it. I mean, we have magnets. Like, you know, I never really thought too much about making magnets before. We're going to do a bigger show at the Fan Expo. I thought, okay, this is a good time to test to see if this is something that people would like. So I don't know what else to tell you about the future, because you never know what's going to happen next.
That's for sure. Well, I would tell anybody who's going into the arts, don't turn down anything. Even like when I worked for American Greetings, when they asked me if I could do molds and castings, I had done so little. I had a vague idea of how it went, but I was able to learn. I knew I could learn it. So I just told them, sure, I can do that. And that's how I ended up working for 12 years for a company that's known worldwide. And then when I lost that, I had some commission pieces, had some other things, and I got the job at the toy company where I was there for 10 years. So there's so many different things that I actually learned. I spent a year on construction. So I learned how to use woodworking and measure stuff and all. So there's different things that you go, well,
Right.
It's going to.
You never know what's going to be a
Part
tool in your next part
Right.
of life.
So that's what I say, don't turn down anything. And if you can't do it, well, you've learned something even if you can't doing it.
Yeah. Or do something else.
Yeah, or maybe you're not supposed to do that, so pray hard.